by congratulating the President, the Council, and members, friends, and well-wishers of NIPR for this wonderful celebration. Sometimes it can be said that it is too early to celebrate, but it is never too late to celebrate, and I think 60 years is worth celebrating. A round of applause for NIPR. It is indeed an honor and privilege for me to moderate what, without a doubt, will be a scintillating conversation. Why is that? Because in today's world, where values are negotiable, where principles are interchangeable, where orientation is questionable, how do we begin to drive value-centered leadership that can stimulate sustainable and inclusive economic transformation in the public, in the private, and in the civil society sectors? And as you can see, we have our eminent panelists here to do justice to this topic. So without further ado, I think I will start with, of course, the Honorable Minister on my left-hand side. And perhaps I'll start on a lighter note before we get a bit more serious. A few days ago here in Lagos, Nigeria, what looked like, no, in Lagos, Nigeria. Yes, but let me land and you will see where I'm going. In Lagos, Nigeria, we had what seemed very close to what you could call an African royal wedding. The world was mesmerized, and it wasn't really royals getting married. It was a musician called Davido to his bride, Chioma. Anywhere in the world you go today, the halls are filled up whenever you hear that a Nigerian performer is coming forward. And I think we have to accept that one of the greatest instruments of public relations for Nigeria today is the entertainment and the creative industry. Honorable Minister, let me ask you, sir, how are we harnessing this enormous power, the soft power that Nigeria has generated through the creative and, of course, the entertainment industry? Honorable Minister, sir, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. It's on. Okay. Thank you, moderator. Thank you for having me. First, before I go into your question, let me have the opportunity, because as Minister of Information, and I know my uncle will agree with me that you will always say something. When the president of the NIPR was on stage, and he talked about hope and how that hope can be renewed. Let me say that this is one of the soft powers, first and foremost, that the president is using to ensure that Nigeria comes together again and Nigeria gets united. The renewed hope of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is actually to renew the hope of Nigerians, because where there is no hope, there is no nation. Where there is no nation, then there is chaos. So renewed hope is here, and we are glad that renewed hope is working. What we are seeing today here is also a stellar example of how the hope of Nigerians is being renewed. What we are witnessing today is not something that you see very common, very often in this country. So thank you, President of NIPR. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to have this happen. And the inspiring story of Her Excellency Dr. Jewel Taylor, very inspiring indeed, from the African continent, how a woman wants to be seen in her own shadows, not just the shadow of her husband or the history that some people have created for her. Thank you for renewing that hope for our women and for our continent. Now, coming back to that marriage that you talked about and how that is also an example of soft power, I was actually mesmerized when all the politicians gathered in Lagos to witness that wedding of Chioma and Davido. It's a very good one, and everybody came together, and the music that was played, I remember that King Sunny Ade, 77 years old, was there, and his lyrics were there to rekindle the kind of hope that Nigerians have had over the years, and how that is being harnessed to ensure that this country moves forward and gets united and gets progress and develop further. So yes, music is there. When our young children were here earlier on to talk about Nigeria, you can see how all of us got together using music to sing about patriotism, to talk about our country, to renew our hope about this country, and to also show that indeed, yes, music can be used to bring us together so that Nigeria can move forward as a nation. I think that not just in Lagos, all over the country, in all parts of this country, and not even in this country, actually. Dr. Jewel mentioned that all over Africa, we use music as an instrument of public relations. And I think that that is also being demonstrated all over the world, not just here. So yes, in our music, in our culture, in our entertainment, we can use that to pass messages of hope, to pass messages of unity and reconciliation and whatever, so that Nigeria and indeed the African continent can move forward.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and for breaking ice and for doing justice to the very first question. But now to go a bit deeper, Your Excellency, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development recently started something called the Trust Survey. Why? Because globally there is a pandemic, and it is a pandemic of a trust deficit between governments and citizens. In your role as the custodian of information and national orientation for our country, how are you using the instruments of public relations to close that gap, to reduce that trust deficit, and to let the people know about the policies of the government and how it responds to them and how it includes them? Your Excellency.
Thank you. Of course, messages of hope and messages of trust, are all somehow, interrelated. Let me say this. When I first assumed duty, and as the president of the NIPR has said, one of the things that I did, or I set out to do on the first day, was that I was going to restore hope in public communication. I think that has gradually been eroded over a number of years. People feel that when a government official comes to them to speak, they will say, he has come again. What has he got to offer? In fact, in some instances, people even turn off their radio stations, turn off their television, because they believe that whoever is there trying to talk on behalf of government is telling them a lie. And to a large extent, there is also some reason for that, because as public communicator, one of the first things that you should do is to ensure that whatever you are saying, you are telling people the truth and nothing but the truth. It is important for people to recognize that. And one of the first things, we had a 5-pillar agenda in the Ministry of Information and National Orientation, and the first one, sitting on top of the pyramid, is that trust must be restored to the art of public communication. That is why, whatever I know that I don't have any information about something, I dare not speak. It is better that I keep my mouth shut than to reproduce ignorance. And I have the blessing, I have the blessing and the approval of my principal, the president, who appointed me, to say it as it is, to say it the way it is, but in the most palatable manner. Trust must return to public communication, because that's the only way that Nigerians, or whoever you are communicating with, will come to agree with you, respect you, and even listen to you. I think to a large extent we've been trying to do that, and we intend to keep that to the very end of my job here.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Please, if you want to clap for him, let's give him a resounding round of applause. And I must say, Your Excellency, not just because we have the same principle and not because I'm also an associate member of NIPR, but because I've watched you do this work within the cabinet, domestically and also internationally. I join everybody in saying you're doing a really great job, Your Excellency. Well done, sir. Now, moving on to the representative of the executive governor of Nasarawa State, I would like to perhaps ask you, because one of the most important aspects of being able to attract foreign direct investment is the image, the reputation, not just of a country, but also a state. Now, since your administration started, we noticed that there's been an increase in your IGR from about 14 billion to about 20 billion. So let us ask you, what is the magic in Nasarawa State, and how are you using public relations to attract people to invest in your state? The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let me tilt this closer. I'd like to say a word or two about trust. I think when the national president of the NIPR, Dr. Neliak, who was speaking earlier on, he said one of the intrinsic things that his new era, new dawn administration is championing is that there must be trust and there must be truthfulness. And oftentimes I ask myself, truth and trust, particularly truthfulness, for instance, isn't it like a double-edged sword? to be overly truthful, especially when you're in politics. And I'm going to give you a practical example as to why I think so. My governor, that's His Excellency Engineer Abdullahi A. Sule, who came from a background of over 35 years of corporate experience. He was the immediate past group managing director of Dangote Sugar, and he was at one time managing director of AP, African Petroleum. That was in the year 2000. Now, when he assumed the position of African Petroleum CEO, AP, it was in a negative of 44 billion. So he told, the board that I want to declare this truthfully and openly, brutally honest. And they said this would completely create an earthquake or some sort of a seismic, shattering effect on the stock market. But he did that. After 6 years of serving as managing director of AP, he left AP from a negative of 44 billion to a positive of 6 billion. So before he assumed the governorship of Nasarawa State, which has actually become an investment frontier for the country now, again, what he did when he was campaigning, or before he did, he brought the globally noted PricewaterhouseCoopers. They said to him, we would give you a gift for working diligently with Dangote as group managing director of Dangote Sugar. And they came to Nasarawa State, did 4 months of studying the potentials of the state. And then that for him brought out what he called NEDS, Nasarawa Economic Development Strategy. On its own, that is being transparent. You have a clear economic blueprint even before you become a governor. And when you're a governor, you begin to implement step by step, minute by minute, what you have done. Because before you came in, what you were actually looking out for was the potential of the state, the net wealth, and so on and so forth. So as at the time he came in, the IGR was about 500 million in a month. After 2 months, he rose it to about 800. Now you can raise about 3 billion. And beyond that, oil has been discovered in the state. Nasarawa State is an oil, producing state now. They're drilling. But beyond that as well, he's been able to attract a lot of industries, Dangote and so on, to come and invest. How do you do that? You maintain transparency, not just as a cliche of politics, which people bandy around during election campaigns, because he, made sure that the public procurement law, he signed it. Okay. It was there lying in the coffers and in the coolers for about 14 years. Okay. He was the governor that actually signed it and now created a Bureau for Public Procurement. And that was noted by the World Bank. Okay. So within the last 5 years, Nasarawa State has received what they call Sifters Awards 4 times from the World Bank. And in fact, just this week, Nasarawa State got a grant for NG Cares, the second position with 27 billion, because of transparency.
So what you're saying to us, sir, is that transparency and accountability are actually tools of public relations, which most people do not understand.
Absolutely, because you keep your books open, people can actually read what comes in, people know what you're doing, they know the direction you're actually going. So that sort of information dissemination, which is based on very clear-cut, transparent rules.
And I think that leads to my second question quite smoothly, which is about social cohesion, because essentially, it is one thing to attract foreigners to invest in your state, but you need peace, you need security, you need stability domestically. So how do you use PR, and how does the governor use PR to make that link between the government, local communities particularly? Because in many instances, there's a bit of a cleavage there, isn't it?
Now, my personal opinion is that for those who are in politics, if we're talking or campaigning about political office, I think it's best we concentrate on competence and character and deliverables and vision. There are politicians who pander to sentiments.
Sure.
Sentiments completely becloud the issue for you to select a leader. Now, the essence of the kind of world we live in now, the world of the internet, is that of inclusion. And when you include, you don't take into cognizance things like ethnicity or religion or where the person is coming from. You embrace everybody. So for me, essentially, if you want to lead and get everybody on board, 1, be inclusive, be transparent, and when people come to debate you, the issues should just be the issues based on governance and competence and character and what you're delivering, rather than sentiments on or anything
And
else.
that
So
is
that's
true value-driven leadership. Thank you very much indeed. A round of applause for him. I'd like to come to our brother, a shining ambassador of our country globally. I have to also be honest to say he's someone I really admire for a wide range of reasons, but one which is I have the honor of serving as the chairman of the Legislative Mentorship Initiative of the former Speaker, now the Chief of Staff to Mr. President, the initiative that focuses on building young leaders in our country. And one of the people that jumped up immediately to support that initiative last year and the year before, right from the beginning, is the next speaker, Mr. Shall I say Chief Allen Oyema from Airpeace. Sir, it's a pleasure to have you and delightful to see you once again. Airpeace is not just an airline, it's a national treasure. We all know this. My brother-in-law, in fact, used to fly for you. He's a pilot. And one thing we've seen is that you've never really sat behind the scenes as a CEO. You've never hidden behind a cockpit, so to speak. You come out, you engage, and you advocate. And recently, when you started the flight to the United Kingdom, there were a few challenges. And let me ask you, how do you manage the many PR challenges your airline faces, not just domestically in case in charge in the sense of people saying, oh, whether you're not flying early enough, or internationally when people have biases, when you come, you know, with authentic business and with the right, taking the right steps. How do you manage that level of public relations domestically, internationally, dealing with operations, finances, as well as politics? Sorry, I think I piled a lot on you, but I know you're up to the task.
Thank you very much. Let me stand on existing protocols. But I must confess that I was moved by the speech of both the president of NIPR and that of Her Excellency, the former vice president of Liberia. I think I share a lot in common with what you went through when you were falsely accused for something you never knew anything about. And our NIPR president talked about, what you were actually talking about was stigma. Stigma. Our country and our continent have been adversely and wholly stigmatized. And the only people that can save this country and this continent are us, not anybody. Except and only when Africa will rise up to refuse to bend, so long shall Africa, so long shall they continue to ride you. Martin Luther King said, except you bend, nobody rides you. You asked the question about the travails we went through. The travails took 7 years coming. For 7 years, you were battling both foreign and local forces in order to help your country. It is no longer about you and you alone, because you're not going to take your wealth to your grave. But it has to do with the millions of unemployed people in our nation who are suffering under the whims and caprices of foreign-induced poverty in Africa, in Nigeria. Foreign-induced. A situation whereby airlines are allowed to come from their country, land in Abuja, and from Abuja go to Port Harcourt, drop passengers, pick from Port Harcourt, come to Abuja again, and pick and go back to their country. This is not done anywhere in the world. It's even abhorred. But it's happening here. And the moment you want to change that, even the government, they will fight the government. They will get together and fight the government. So when you see the avalanche of challenges thrown on your path, you can only do one thing. You can only decide to bend and accept it, or refuse to bend and stand up for what you believe in. And in so doing, just be prepared that a lot of flags will be thrown at you. Are you ready to accept those things? You're going to be accused for things you never ever dreamt of. Hang them on your head, but you should be ready for the sake of country. For the love of country, you have to do those things. I've decided to sacrifice myself for this nation, but mind you, I'm not interested in politics, because sometimes when you fight some of these battles, some lily-livered politicians elsewhere will think that you're out to do politics. Now to your question, how have I leveraged public relations as a tool? No doubt, without public relations, we may not have been where we are today. This is the reason when I got the call for today, I said, I must leave every other thing I'm doing to honor this industry and this institution. Because it's an institution we all should be not only proud of, but to encourage, to change the narratives in our country. For example, we have 378 ethnic nationalities that make up this country, not 250. This is a lot of force, a lot of strength. Like they said, there's strength in diversity. America is the melting pot of every ethnic group in the whole world. Yes, America is still looking for more diversity. That's why they introduced diversity visas. And all of us are running towards them because they need more of it. Here we are blessed with 378 ethnic nationalities. You can't have anything better than this. Yet it has become an albatross of a kind for us instead of being a strength. We are looking for a new Nigeria using the tool of public relations. That was why your public relations value reorientation comes in.
Correct.
We are looking for a situation we can use that to change the narratives and make Nigerians believe in Nigeria. Make Nigerians understand that we have a lot of strength in being one. I want a Nigeria where every Nigerian will fight for each other as against fighting against each other. That is the only time we make a difference. So we leveraged on public relations to do what we did. We even to get the federal government of President Muhammad Buhari to waive the payment of VAT on your ticket fares, to waive custom duties for the importation of aircraft and aircraft spares. We use public relations too to do that. First of all, we used it on the National Assembly. And when the groundswell of opinion tilted towards understanding what we are talking about, the National Assembly had no time to waste in passing that bill. Of course, the former president didn't waste a minute in signing into law. So today, airlines could import aircraft without paying duties. Airlines could import spare parts without paying duties, even though customs, sometimes they try to introduce some other headings with which they come after us. We do that. And on the London thing, for 7 years we've been fighting it below the radar until we engaged in public relations. And that was brought to the public sphere.
Thank you.
And things started happening. Without that, no Nigerians would have been paying 17 million today to do a 6 hours flight.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. You really reflect that adage about where business meets responsibility. I have one question, and I'd like you to please give us a very short response. Now, public relations is also about correcting mistakes. Could you share with us one mistake you think has been made and how it was corrected using the tool of public relations at the airpiece?
Well, there was this day I was at the airport, and I was expecting a flight to come in because a friend of mine was traveling, and I asked the ramp officer, okay, when is that flight from Gombe coming in? Because that flight will be going to Port Harcourt. He said the aircraft will be landing in 40 minutes time. So I sat there waiting, and when it was about the 40th minute, I was looking towards the approach. to see whether I could see any aircraft lights coming. 40 minutes passed. I didn't see my aircraft. 1 hour passed. I didn't see my aircraft. 1.5 hours passed. And I called the guy. I said, you told me 40 minutes, almost 2 hours now. I said, I don't know. So you can understand, as an owner of an airline, sweat was all over me.
Okay.
Sweat was all over me. Not knowing that the aircraft he was talking about was on the ground as at the time he was talking to me.
So how did you solve the problem, sir?
No, it's not about me. It's about the delay that occasion. If the ramp officer didn't know that his aircraft was already on the ground, he had already caused delays because he didn't call for boarding. And the pilot had been trying to get him on radio and couldn't get him. He said the battery of his whatever went off. That was a slip, and that caused a delay for that day. And later, this kind of thing came out in the public sphere. You know, sometimes, our Honorable Minister of Information said, sometimes you speak the truth. We came out and apologized to people that it was human error. Somebody dropped the ball. All of you who were involved in this, we are compensating you with X, Y, Z. So they were happy that at least we accepted.
So essentially, sir, humility is a grand tool of public relations. Thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Let me move on to one of the most powerful women in the room. You can see she's surrounded by 6 men on this panel. She sits undaunted like a queen, ready to deal with the issues. And it's really delightful to have you here, madam. You are a leading light in your sector in terms of financial inclusion particularly. Let me ask you, as a leader in that field, what are your thoughts on valued-centered public relations, especially when it focusing on from a gender-inclusive perspective, knowing fully well that in the financial sector, most women are actually completely excluded from the ecosystem? The floor is yours, madam.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, moderator. I must say that this is such a very distinguished gathering. I do recognize the great work that you do, Doctor. As the president of this institute, there can never be a better time to be one. This gathering simply speaks to it, and 60th is very remarkable. So congratulations to everyone in this practice, yes. Right, and I'm very delighted about the questions because it's two-pronged. It speaks to finance, which includes every single person, whether you're female or not, and then very importantly also, it recognizes that financial inclusion speaks to women, which is another area and constituency that I do represent. And so I would start with regards to the place of finance as it relates to values. So first of all, I would like us to understand very clearly that the financial service sector is one industry and sector that powers all of our life. For every single investment, for every single thing we want to do, we require and expect that that sector and industry will provide both the infrastructure, the opportunity to be able to engage, transfer, lend, save, and do anything with finance. And so what that sector is also doing consistently is to ensure that through technology, it provides opportunity for commerce, for trade. And I do know how almost everybody in the room has seen how in the last 5 years, or even 10, financial technology has made it possible for all of us to transact even in our villages. So when you speak to agency banking, when you speak to mobile money, when you speak to doing transactions in your bedroom, and several people even right here has done quite a lot of transactions. But then I would like to take the discussion back to the issue of trust, which is what almost every single person has touched on, and that's really very important. And where does trust come in? Trust comes in trusting our systems as a nation and trusting the people who are operators or regulators or even policy makers. Trust is very crucial for the financial service sector because without trust, there is absolutely no way that you can tell that you can go to sleep having so much investment or even fund kept within that sector. And so trust is really critical. And if you take that back into value, it means that both the operators and the players and the customers must be able to work collaboratively to build trust so that there is also that continuous growth. And having spoken emphatically around trust, I would like to circle back to the place for women. Now, why is women so important, and why is it a very great thing to talk about? There is no way that you can look at an economy that bottom of the pyramid is predominantly powered by small businesses. And who are the people who run a lot of these small businesses? There are women. And because there are women who run these small businesses, it is therefore important that we recognize how they are oiling the economy consistently. So, but I would bring that discussion to public relations, which is the reason that we are here. So to what level does public relations help to enable and create stories about these women who are doing great things, the unsung heroes who are doing so much to catalyze and stimulate the economy? So if you just take a look at me, like several beautiful women in the room, especially our vice president all the way from, yeah, please, all the way from, yeah, no, from Liberia, you would see something that is very remarkable about us. You would see the way that we've converted the opportunities in Africa by patronizing Africans. Most of what you see that I'm wearing is designed and built and engineered by African women, and we do know that, right? And when she stepped up the stage, you could see how glamorous she was in her typical African attire. So how many of us are patronizing these opportunities that would grow and catalyze the economy, knowing that these same women are powering their families, powering their nation, and then driving the growth that is very important? Lastly, I would close by saying that storytelling is really important. The reason Rwanda today is great as a nation is because Rwanda has totally converted its country and nation to the best in tourism. And so it's not just about financial inclusion, it's not just about being women, it's also about how public relations experts in this room are contributing to building those positive stories that will flip the narration of our country. For Rwanda, their largest source of foreign exchange earning contributes over 450 million to local currency, and that's in 2023. So you find that there is a benefit in storytelling. Everybody who wants to run a conference today from everywhere in the world goes to Rwanda. Everybody who wants to know what a chimpanzee looks like goes to Rwanda. And it takes $1,000 in Rwanda to look at a chimpanzee. But here, as we are public relations experts, let's collaborate with women, businesses, structures, organizations, and the nation to tell positive stories that would make our nation the best in the world.
Thank you very, very much indeed, and very, very nicely said. Let me quickly add a little rejoinder there. I mean, you serve also on the Executive Council of the Women in Management, Business, and Public Service, which is called WIMBIZ. But across Africa, and not just Nigeria, and even in other parts of the world, there is still a question about the inclusion of women in public and economic life. Particularly at the leadership levels. Now, I know WIMBIZ does a lot of this in terms of trying to get women to the heights of the leadership, but my question to you would be, how do you think public relations can be used to remove the stigma? Because in most cases, what creates that glass ceiling is the stigma, the bias, the assumptions about what women can do and cannot do. How would you tackle that from a public relations perspective?
Thank you very much, and I do love the question because it simply speaks to how can we empower and enable women play a greater role in governance, in leadership, whether it's in the private sector or the public sector. And I'll pretend that I didn't hear the part about the stigma, and I'll tell you why. People like to put the wrong narrative outside. I do not think it's a matter of stigma. I actually think it's a matter of having the right policies that can enable women play better. So if you take a look at a country like Senegal, women are seated in their Senate and they are doing extremely great things. If you look at a country like Tunisia, you've got a female president who's done great things. If you take a look at the Nigerian financial service sector, you've got a minimum of 11 managing directors who are female. Please put your hands together for them if you do love that. In speaking to the women in the banks who have gotten to 11, I will only tell you and remind everyone in this room how we got around that. The very distinguished Emir Sanusi, when he was the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, created a policy that says that women must be 30% on the board as well as senior management of every bank. Yeah, put your hands together for him. He may not be here, but that's the start point of what we see today. So what has happened? Women started to get into senior management, assistant general managers, executive directors, and today NIPR has honored one lady, Mrs. Awoshika, as an honorary fellow who was the board chairman of Access Bank.
Thank you.
So the point I'm making with that is the moment we start to become more positive about letting women be on the table and in the room and create the right policies, the women are there. Right here in this room, there are super solid women across every single sector who can be ministers, and I know them too well. Policies, policies, policies. Let's give the opportunity.
And thank you, and let's give her a round of applause for holding forth on behalf of all the women, but also for the many he for she's who are here in this room supporting that agenda. Now, let me come quickly to the representative of the executive governor of Jigawa State. When I moved back to Nigeria in 2009, one of the first places I worked was in Jigawa State on behalf of the British government, one of those development programs. And I remember in those days, everybody used to just, when they say you're going to Jigawa, you say no, you want to go to Kano, you want to go to Kaduna. I think I remember seeing a brand new bank that was built, but there was nobody in it. There were hotels. I think there was a three Rose Hotel or something like that, and that was the largest hotel in Jigawa then. But go back to Jigawa now. It really reflects what we're talking about here in terms of economic transformation. How has that been done? And particularly under the executive governor, what are the kind of means and ways you're using public relations to, one, change the perception that Jigawa is far out, is like it's the younger cousin of Kano? We know that's not the case. How do you change that perception? And secondly, how do you then attract the kind of investment that you need to calibrate your economic transformation in Jigawa State? The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you so much for this very interesting question. And before I say anything, I would like to convey the message of His Excellency to this very noble institution. His Excellency has asked me to congratulate the Public Relations Institute, not only in Nigeria, for the entire global community because of the presence of APRA and Global Alliance for the 60th anniversary of the association. Very good congratulations from His Excellency on behalf of Government of Jigawa State. And considering what you said and looking at the theme of this anniversary, His Excellency has started his journey right from the campaign. When His Excellency was asked to serve as the gubernatorial candidate in Jigawa State, he understands the terrain. He was deputy governor, and before deputy governor, he was already a commissioner of finance. So he has been around throughout the last 8 years of the past administration. So he understands Jigawa very well, and he was around when the stage was set under the APC in 2015 to see how we can change the narrative about Jigawa State. So one thing that His Excellency did right from the campaign was to employ public relations strategy and tactics. That's to be able to communicate effectively. This is a governor who came with a 12-point agenda when he was contesting to be governor of Jigawa State, and he went around to 27 local government areas of Jigawa State, at the same time go around to the 287 ward, telling the good people of Jigawa State his manifesto and what he believed in order to change the narrative of Jigawa State. And to God be the glory, using the PR tactics and strategy, he was able to already establish a mindset in the chunk number of Jigawa State, particularly the youth. So what he did is to do what he can to be able to put confidence in the minds of the youth of Jigawa State. That's when he became the governor of Jigawa State. Within 5 days of his arrival in office, he was able to set an agency that is dedicated for employment and empowerment of our youth in Jigawa State. And one thing that I want to give you an example, as His Excellency have 12-point agenda, the president have Renew Hope agenda, and His Excellency have key in the Renew Hope agenda. So what is critical for Jigawa State is value reorientation. Value reorientation in the sense that to be able to change the mindset of the people, and particularly focusing on the youth. One thing that His Excellency do to be able to drive economic transformation in Jigawa State in the last 1 year was to look at youth as a key example. What he did is to say, hey, if you go around to any local government, you see a lot of number of young people following His Excellency, and at the end of the day, and they want to be employed in government. And the government cannot employ all. So what he did is to do value orientation. We have a very vast land in Jigawa State, and we can create a very large farmland to be able to make a farming attractive to young people. So His Excellency come up with a program, say, Rice Millionaires. Jigawa State, we have a very fertile line, and if you are hardworking in Jigawa State, with a 1 hectare of land, you can be able to have about 5 to 5.5 tons of rice. So any young person that is looking for a job, when he engage in agriculture, when the government give him the land to farm, support him with implements, give him seedlings, and he will be able to do well. Before you know it, now our young people are not guessing for being employed in government, but they want to go back to the farm. So you see how Jigawa State was able to use value reorientation to be able to change the narrative by making agriculture attractive to our young people. Today, I can tell you, in Jigawa State, Honorable Minister can testify, he went to Jigawa State, he saw the revolution in rice production in Jigawa State. This is a state in the dry season, we cultivated over 200,000 hectares of rice, and we are contributing to the food security of the nation. And another thing that I want you to understand, for we to have prosperity and have economic transformation in Jigawa State, we have to have peace in the state. And Jigawa State is one of the most peaceful states in the northwest Nigeria. And one thing that we do is to use PR strategies to be able to communicate between the government and the traditional institution to be able to reorient the society and to be able to embrace the value of peace in our own community has also contributed tremendously. Let me give you an example. Just last week, His Excellency in Jigawa State, we have 27 local governments, but we have about 2 local governments that are always having conflict between farmers and headers. Every year in, year out, you find crisis and conflict between the farmers. But what we did is to employ PR strategies to be able to set up a powerful committees that bring together the farmers and the headers to be able to have a peaceful coexistence. Now in Jigawa State, for the last 1 year, we celebrated a farming season that has not caused any single life in Jigawa State. So PR will be a veritable tool in bringing prosperity and economic development in our state. But we thank God Jigawa State is quite moving in the right direction and prosperity is coming. When you look at the competitive advantage of the state is agriculture. What His Excellency did was to look at the value chain through agriculture. We are the largest producer of sesame in Nigeria. We are the largest producer of hibiscus in Nigeria. And in the wheat farming, the federal government, under the New Hope agenda of His Excellency, come with a laudable program that come to have contribution from African Development Bank. Jigawa State was given opportunity to cultivate 40,000 hectares out of 120,000 hectares that is supposed to be dedicated for wheat production in Nigeria. Guess what? As a result of that value reorientation, Jigawa State had exceeded the expectation from 40,000 to 55,000 hectares of wheat production in Jigawa State through value orientation. So this is what we have been able to do, and prosperity is coming, and the Jigawa State will emerge stronger as we progress.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Usually I ask 2 questions, but you actually already answered my second question, and you did so brilliantly well. You very well represented His Excellency the Governor, and I haven't been to Jigawa since 2011, but now I know I can come there and become a rice millionaire, so I'm on my way very soon. Thank you very much indeed. To our last panelist, I can be accused of saving the best for last because we're both wearing waistcoats, and we're both begoggled, so to speak, but that is not the case. It's because he is a seasoned PR practitioner, Chief Yomibade Jo Okusonya, the CEO of CMC Connect. Sir, it's a pleasure to have you here to start with. I'm so sorry I forgot my bow tie today. I will make sure I wear it the next time I'm with you. But going from bow tie to more important matters, we are living in a digital age, and everybody has mentioned it in one way or the other. And again, it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, it can be used to send PR messages, but we also live in an era of fake news, deep fakes, artificial intelligence. How can organizations maintain transparency and authenticity? And I want to emphasize authenticity in their PR messages while navigating the challenges of misinformation and disinformation. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Dapo. Let me join my voice to congratulating the president of NIPR, Dr. Ike Neliaku. What you probably didn't say is I'm also the immediate past president of the African Public Relations Association. And I look forward to my retirement. But somehow or the other, between the president and his vice, they keep pulling me into things. Something remarkable about President Neliaku is that he gets everybody working for him. And I think that's a fantastic attribute. Even when you don't want to, it's a fantastic attribute. Thank you, sir. And then to Her Excellency, I consider myself partly Liberian. And perhaps you don't know, I handled the campaign of the first female president in Africa, Elif Johnson. So I've been to Liberia a number of times. I remember we were on opposite sides then when you were campaigning for your seat at the Senate. And then we were trying to get Her Excellency into office as the president. But the rest, I say, is history. Thank you very much for coming here. And now to your question. One of the greatest bulwarks of public relations is ethics. And a lot of people don't realize that without ethics, public relations cannot work. Why? Because ethics brings about trust. And then trust drives reputation, which is what we're looking for. So let's take the Honorable Minister. I always make, I say this every time, two of us, and I can say to some extent the current president, were in the trenches fighting for a better NIPR. And one became a minister, the other became a president, and they left me alone. So maybe someday too, I too will become something or the other. He said they shall consider me. But I remember in those days, and we say this every time, we were younger and we didn't like a lot of things that were going on in the institute. So we were more like the rebels. Before we go for an AGM like this, we would have gathered somewhere in Kaduna or somewhere. And how we can become very disruptive because we felt that our voices weren't being heard. We felt we could do this better. Well, Honorable Minister, it is now your turn, so you better do it better. But let's take, for instance, we talk about digital age and the ethics. I sent something to my brother and my successor in office, Eric. I just sent it to you this morning, and it was analyzed that the speech that was made by the president of Kenya, President William Ruto, 2 days ago when the incident happened, and he responded, quote and unquote, harshly, that the young people have proven that 90-something % of that speech was AI generated. Have you seen that? It's trending now. That 90-something % of the speech made by President Ruto on the day that the riot started was 90-something, I think it was 92% AI generated. Now, what does that mean? AI can only aid public relations. It cannot take the place of public relations. And for those of us who are using AI more than we ought to, we are going to do the same mistake. We are going to commit the same mistake that President William Ruto is alleged to have committed. Now, let me tell you something. Those who know about creativity, when you design things like a creative studio, there are two types of creative people. There are those who have the creativity in their head, and the computer is just helping them to express that creativity. When I started this work, and my dear brother will attest, the computer was just coming into it. We had what you used to call finished artwork. We remember bromide. Arik was talking about whites and all of that. So the creativity must first be in your mind before you take it into a computer. What a computer does, a Mac or whatever, is to help you express what you have already created in your mind. But if you go to a business center, there's somebody who is not a creative person. He just knows how to put the lines together from a computer. So that's the kind of person you ask to help you put together a logo, to put together a campaign, and there's no heart or there's no kernel in it. So, in this day of digital, we must still be careful.
Sure.
Public relations is still about relationship with the public, which AI cannot replace.
Excellent.
So we must first do our work. We must first go through the same processes that public relations we have been taught, the elementaries of public relations. We must first go through those processes, and then we can then use technology to enhance what we want to do. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does answer my question exceptionally well, but let me throw in one last one, and I'll be very grateful. I'm trying to manage time. If you can be as succinct as possible, which of course you already are. I'm thinking, they say that what is not measured can be considered as not done. Now, how do organizations, what metrics do they use to measure the impact of their PR efforts? Because sometimes it can be seen as subjective. Now, one of the fantastic things that Mr. President has launched, and I like when you said President Eliaku, he has a nice ring to my ears. You never know, it's not too late. Maybe he'll become president someday. But one of the things that President Eliaku has put forward is this idea of a reputation perception index. This is one of the instruments you could use. So, but generally speaking, what do you think? How do we measure the impact of PR initiatives and how they're really transforming either institutions or even our nation?
I completely agree with you. What cannot be measured cannot be valued. One of the problems we have with public relations is that what value do we actually bring to the table? When you talk about a newspaper, a journalist, he will show you a newspaper, he would show you a TV or whatever. When you talk about an advertising person, he will show you a commercial, he will show you a jingle. The problem we've had is that what do we show? So first and foremost, there's a lot of ambiguity about who we are, what we represent, and what we bring to the table. So one of the things that people think of us, they've called us protocol officers, they've called us party arrangers, they've called us people who bring girls, they've called us people who organize bribes. The fastest way you can get me mad is to say, I did PR for them. I could tear you into pieces. Because what you're telling me is that I've spent 30-something years of my life knowing how to bring bribe. That's not me. And I reject it. What do they say? So, now, how do we measure? So we as public relations practitioners must find a way to bring measurement into it, constant measurement. And I think Mazi Okereke has challenged the minister that we need to do a national perception audit. I know there's something that the NIPR is doing. But let me tell you that one of the things that has become useful for us is what you call the Barcelona principle. And I think we have 3.0 now, AMEC, Barcelona principle. How do we measure public relations before? By what you call AVE, average advertising value equivalent. Yeah. So we look in a newspaper and we say our story was front page. So we multiply it by 15, 10, 5, and we say that's the value we got. That's unscientific. That's analog. It can't work anymore. There's something called the Barcelona principle. I think we're now at 3.0. AMEC. AMEC is a body that runs measurement of public relations globally. We need to get those scientific tools. We need to bring them on board. We need to be able to sell to government, to my dear brother, who is the Honorable Minister of Information, and say, look, when you did this, this is what it got you. When you did this, This is what it got you. We must be able to speak to Jigawa and Nasara here that these are the things that value that public relations brings to the table. To my dear brother, Chief Oyema, we need to be able to tell you. You know, I keep on saying something. One thing, and I've said this to you before. The travels you are going through, how much, what will Richard Branson do that the British government will throw him under the bus because of the value that Virgin Atlantic contributes to the economy of Britain? So, long and short, we must be more scientific. We must embrace technology in everything we do in terms of public relations. And I think my dear brother, Honorable Minister, please pass this on to the governor. The measurement of your performance should not be in billboards. Okay. When you go to every state, the biggest billboards you see are those of the governors. And you know the funny thing? The minute the governor ceases to be in government, the next person has taken the billboard.
Thank you.
Please stop getting high on your own supply. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. You're a case well made for evidence-based public relations, and by the power of my prophetic tongue, I'd like to thank you very much, Honorable Minister Yomibadi Jomo Okusoya. You see, we did hear your request from your mouth to God's ears someday. As we round up, let me, let's perhaps give everyone just 1 minute, if you would permit me, just 1 minute to give closing statements. And perhaps we'll start with the representative of the Honorable Minister, I beg your pardon, the Executive Governor of Jigawa State. Just 1 minute, your closing remarks. The floor is yours, sir.
Right, so thank you. I think I will encourage the Institute of Public Relations to continue on this professionalism and to continue to come up with initiatives that will reorient the society to take initiatives to be able to make Nigeria stronger and wonderful country. Thank you for coming, and I thank everybody here.
Thank you very much indeed. It's been a pleasure having you, and thank you for your contribution. Chief Oyema, our wings in the sky.
Thank you very much. I would like to humbly charge the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations to pick up the gauntlet in changing the narrative about Nigeria. Our country is highly stigmatized. Nigeria is a great nation. Nigeria is better than is being portrayed outside Nigeria. It's only the public relations tool that could be engineered from them that could cause a reawakening or a new perception of our country. This country is so beautiful, so sweet, so good, but it is highly stigmatized outside. Within, we stigmatize ourselves along ethnic and religious lines. This can be changed. We remain one nation. God bless you all.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, and thank you for all that you do for Nigeria in so many ways that we cannot begin to mention. And the Amazon that stands tall amongst men. The floor is yours, madam.
Thank you very much. I do like the fact that the world recognizes that public relations people are extremely special people. They have the power to make, they have the power to marry. They have the power to make things happen and also show the world what value is. So I would speak to the how, and I love how Sir Onyema has spoken about Nigeria. There can't be anything sitting on this stage I would ask the NIPR professionals who are actually my colleagues and professional colleagues. There is nothing else I can ask other than to bring to life what Sir Onyema has said, which is bring the story of Nigeria to the world. The only thing that I would add to what he has said is the how. And I say the how because we really need to make it practical and start to make it happen. Leverage the power of storytelling, which a whole lot of practitioners in this room have read about, have learned about, have heard about even in business schools and business cases in Harvard. But let's move it from saying to doing. Let's move it from vision to happening. And so some of the things that we can do is to start looking for the real stories, the beautiful stories, the accomplishments the personalities and individuals who've done great things that we can profile and highlight. The businesses that have done great things that we can profile and highlight. Let's not leave it to Davido only, or to Genevieve, or to, yeah, because everywhere you go, people are speaking about the Nigerian music, Nigerian theater, Nollywood. But let's be more practical. The fashion is big story. The businesses are big story. They're fantastic export of products. Where is Alabuku? So many people in this room at one point in time had used Alabuku. Why are we not seeing those on the shelves of the pharmacy, in Walmart, in Walgreens, in CVS, at the booths? Why are we letting our local brands die because we are not storytelling about our nation? PR experts, please find the stories, tell the stories, share the stories that uplift our nation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You want to throw in a quick word, sir? Okay, very quickly, please, sir.
Sorry, go ahead.
I forgot to say this while I was making my own point. See, we need our female gender. Women can move this nation. In support of what my co-panelists said before about women, it's not even about stigma on them, it's about their performance. Women have proven over time that they could perform. Let me give you an example with all my companies, including Airpeace. I just discovered inadvertently that most of my companies are being run by women. Airpeace, which is the most popular because it's an airline, has over 4,000 staff. 70% of them are women.
Thank you, sir.
My management team in Airpeace of 28 member management, only 6 are men. Airpeace is being run by women, and by the grace of God Almighty, is one of the emerging forces in that aviation sector, not Nigeria alone, but in Africa. But it's being engineered by women. So I respect all of you women who are here today and encourage you to come out to even involve yourself in politics like our sister from Liberia has done. That is the only time Nigeria will begin to make some meaningful changes when the women are involved.
Thank you very much indeed. Much appreciated. Now on very quickly to the representative of the governor of Nasarawa State. And I should say, sir, I have a nickname for you. It's a Cicero of Nasarawa State. The floor is yours.
I'm blushing, Ebony. I actually heard this the very first time from the national president of the NIPR, Dr. Ike Neliaku. He said, I didn't say, he said that when we finally get to heaven, all professions will no longer exist. The only profession that will thrive in heaven when they're looking at our book of life and they're weighing on the scale our actions or inactions, the only profession that will thrive in heaven is public relations. He said, I'm quoting him directly. Well, I really did a lot of thinking about it, and I said, perhaps maybe one of these angels may have to interpret or distill our actions to the Almighty so that you say, well, in this guy's book of life, there was a time he did this, he did that. But again, that buttresses what Amazon here has said. PR, public relations, is storytelling. I studied film. Storytelling has to do with man's fundamental search for meaning. You tell a story to find yourself. And I think that we should begin to interrogate a lot of things about this country. If Davido has taken over the internet, then what is the subliminal thing that has led everybody to gravitate towards that? And if we no longer are listening to Bongo Zikwe when he sang, Would He Ever Get There, to do the Kokoro Dawn when they were doing the Green Revolution during Shagari, what is happening? Why is it that our youth are tilting towards BB Niger And then the stories themselves are either extolling or glorifying sex and violence. If we go to the subliminal, what is really beneath the surface, and we're able to find this out artistically and convey them, we will do what Wole Soyinka once did before. He sang a song, I love my country, I no go lie. Now inside I'm a go live and die. That's Professor Wole Soyinka, also being a musician. So basically we have all the tools in public relations. If it is music, if it is spectacle, whatever it is, it's at our fingertips. Let's use it to do what those kids that came up did, to make us believe in Timi Dakolo's song, believe in this country and the promise that it holds.
Thank you so much. So articulately and wonderfully said. Now to, of course, our bow-tied oracle and a seasoned expert in this field. Your closing remarks, sir.
Hello. Okay. I'm going to address my fellow practitioners. And all I'm going to say to you is that it is time for us to stop being apologetic for being public relations practitioners. It's time for you to stop being reticent. It is time for you to be bold. The world is waiting for you. What are you afraid of? Let's embrace it. Let's take it. There's a Yoruba adage that I have, and pardon me if I say, Aibawon Simbe, Ola Aibawon Dasi. You are only permitted not to get involved if you are not there. But once you are there, please get involved. Boldly, public relations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and very well said. Well, I think our last word will go to the custodian of information and national orientation for the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and no person other than His Excellency Alhaji Mohammed Idris, the Honorable Minister of Information and National Orientation. The last word goes to you, sir.
Thank you, Dapo. Let me say that, again, I can't be tired of saying thank you to the President and members of Council and all the professionals who have put it together. The President, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has changed the name of Minister of Information to Minister of Information and National Orientation. Now, it is not just in the name. What he's trying to do is to put national orientation in the center of affairs of this country. Because there's this recognition that you can build all the roads, you can improve on all the infrastructure, you can do everything. Once the right attitude is not there, you will lose everything. Therefore, the President said, go and ensure that Nigerians are not just informed, but they also have the right attitude so that we can have that shared prosperity for our country to reach the destination that all of us want to go. The work that National Orientation Agency is doing is really great. At this level, it's still building the right blocks. The National Values Charter has been put together and is also going to be put in the front burner of all Nigerians by no other person than the President himself. He's going to do that very shortly. And national orientation, our lost values, will have to be reclaimed for us to reach the prosperity that all of us so desire. But beyond that, I need to say this, that the President, we can't be tired of acknowledging what you have done, the President of NIPR. It is the first time that as the City Minister of Information and National Orientation, I'm having 4 of my predecessors in this room. It is not just by accident. I have my uncle, Professor Jerry Gana here. I have Mr. Labram Maku, Mr. Frank Nweke Jr., and our uncle, Mr. Lai Mohammed, the one I took over from. 5 of us. And I told each of them that I'm planning to do a small summit so that I can tap from their various experiences in the last 20 years to put it together and see how we can better inform Nigerians. But like I said at the beginning, trust has to return to the art of public communication. We fought this, like Yomi Badijo said, 30 years ago when we were still growing, trying to build what we now have as this new national image through the national Nigerian Institute of Public Relations. It didn't just happen by accident. All of us have been fighting this in the last 30 years. I'm happy that we are at this point, having the Continental Body Chair, President here, having the Global Alliance President here, and having the former President of APRA, Yomi Badejo Okusaya. He didn't say that. He said that the President of NIPR has become something, and I have become something. What he didn't tell you was that he has been something before all of us. And I listened to the interview of my uncle, Professor Jerry Gana, about a week ago on NTA. And one of the things that he said that I took away from that interview was that as the information minister, or as anybody who is in charge of information, you should know that whatever you say is being watched, and you cannot afford to have a slip. I think the NIPR has helped us to do that. It is not by accident that we are enjoying one of the longest honeymoons on this job. We intend to continue to have it, but I know that it's not going to be easy, but I will tap into the experiences of everyone here to ensure that Nigerians are better informed, and not just informed, we have the right attitude so that all of us can reach the prosperity that Mr. President has promised us. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you very, very much. I did promise you that, protocol-wise, I'm not allowed because the Honorable Minister has the last word, and I do not want to put him on the spot. Or would you permit one last? All right, sir. The floor is yours, madam. Very briefly, please.
Thank you very much. Very distinguished Honorable Minister. I appreciate the fact that you gave the approval to cut across protocols. But I just wanted to say something before we leave the room. I'm very delighted that I'm the only lady in this plenary, and I do not want to leave without mentioning this. I really want to say that I'm an Amazon, I am an Amazon, and I love the fact that I represent the womanhood as an Amazon. But I would also like to situate my name because it was never mentioned here, so I don't get drowned and lost around the whole giant of men. My name is Chizo Malize, Leslie Chizo Malize. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of FITC, a Central Bank of Nigeria company, and we lead a whole lot of the work that you see in the banking sector. And Mr. Honorable Minister, I'm available, like one of the women that you are looking for, to do great things for this nation. Thank you very much.
Nicely done. Nicely done. Thank you very, very much.
You know, I just want to be sure that protocol is not broken, so I will still say the last word. Thank you for being there. I don't want to say you are available. You have been there for us, all of us, to see how we can partner in the interest of our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very, very much indeed. And I would like to please ask for your forgiveness, the participants who are here. We would have loved, I'm sure you have a lot of burning questions, but also we had such eminent speakers, we had to squeeze as much wisdom from them as possible. I'm sure there'll be other platforms where you're able to engage and discuss, but I'm sure you agree with me, this has been a scintillating conversation, like I said. Now, I will not summarize, but some key words have come out from our conversation, and maybe I would like to highlight them as some of our takeaways. Trust, transparency, humility, accountability, inclusion. Inclusion, I like to pause on inclusion because we talked about women, but we did not talk about people living with disabilities, which is a critical issue when it comes to public relations. And I can hear Mr. Jacob Pelle here at the back there saying, So, sir, we acknowledge that we did not talk about that, but I'm sure perhaps we can even have a focused group discussion about that because that's a critical issue to be dealt with in our country. There's also the issue of storytelling, policy intentionality, effective communication, mindset change, building institutions, evidence-based public relations. And I say at the end of it all, we can all round it up with one word: leadership. It's really all about leadership. And on that tone, I'd like to say a very big thank you to all our leaders who have been members of our panel, but also the leaders of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations for convening us here. And of course, I'd like to thank you all for the honor and the pleasure of moderating what I think I enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you very much indeed, and have a good afternoon.